Hi there, and welcome back to Triplicate. And today we're going to move on with the super battery charger cum tester. Now it was always intended that this would be set up from a PC application, and you would tell it what we want it to do and then just press go and it would go away and do it, and then it wouldn't need to be connected to the PC anymore. So to write PC applications I use Embarcadero C Builder, which is this. Now I used to use the Microsoft Visual C++, but I found every time they upgraded it, it was completely different, so I had to relearn it, and it's overcomplicated for what I want to do, and I think probably overcomplicated full stop. And this, when they upgrade it, they don't change much, and it seems to me to be very simple and intuitive to use. And this is the community edition, which is the triplicate friendly price of free. So shall we start by creating ourselves a new project? So we go to File, New, Windows VCL application. It will do things for Android and Mac OS, but I've never tried that. So here we go. This is the Windows Forms. Creates a Windows Forms application. There we go. So now we want to save this in the directory we want to save it into. So save project as, okay, we're saving it to this directory, and this is where you can get things a bit wrong if you're not careful. So unit 1 is actually the main form, which is sort of the main for the program, so we're going to call that main form, not CPP, and we're going to save that. Okay, this is the precompiled header file, which we probably won't use so much because it's only a small project, and we're going to call that super battery charger, which is also going to be the name of the project. Doesn't have to be, but it just keeps things logical, and we don't want the one, so we save that. And finally it will ask us for the project name, which is that. And what I've got wrong in the past is where it asks you for the name for the form C++ file, I've put the same name as that in, and then it gets upset. So there we've got a project, and now run. So if we run that, it'll compile it. And run it, and there's our little form, which doesn't do anything yet, but we know we've got a running program now. So we have here the object inspector. Now I like to call all my objects a name instead of just form 1, because you end up with button 36 and you think, what, button 36, what's that? So we shall call this form main. We will rename the caption, which is at the top of the window, to no, we won't, triplicate super battery charger. And what we will also do is go in the project options. Now, okay, I might be a bit controversial here, but if we go into the C++ compiler, Recently they brought out what they call a Clang compiler, which is better I guess, but find it very slow on big files. So I'm going to go back to the classic Borland compiler from the days when it was Borland Builder. Well, it works fine for me and it's quick. So we will do that, and then we will run it again. And now we have our little window with the title we want. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to expand our window a bit and put something in it. So here on the right we have the palette, and if we look in standard we will find T group box. So we're going to have a T group box, and that is just a container to put things in. It's useful for sort of for the benefit of the users, grouping controls together. Also, if you make the group box invisible, it makes all its contents invisible as well, which is useful. So and we're going to call our group box info, and its caption is just going to be info. Okay, and into that group box we are going to put a T memo. Which is just a way of printing text out. And we're going to call that memo info, and some lines. This is where the text goes. We are going to get rid of the text that's in it. So now we're going to add a button. Which we are going to call button Hello World. And the text on this button is going to be Hello World. Right, so let's just check that appears alright. There we go. And our button doesn't do anything yet. Shall we make the button do something? So if we select our button, that's the object inspector, we look at events and we look at on click. If we just double click in there, it automatically makes us a function to handle our button click. Now C++ Builder uses for its strings as C++ class called ANSI string. I always find it strange that they had the string was defined in C, but when it came to C++ they didn't define an absolute standard string class, but this is the one that C++ Builder uses, and we're going to call that print string. So we are going to say print string equals hello world. Now here we go. We're now going to write that to the memo, so that will be memo info lines and then add print string. And that should just print hello world to the memo. Shall we see if it does? Okay, so shall we click our button? There we go. Okay, so now we're in a position to start creating our user interface. Many years of experience has told me that you can spend a lot of time designing a user interface on paper, and then when you actually come to implement it, you find it's all wrong and clunky and an absolute pain to use and have to redesign it. So this is what I tend to do. I just draw a picture of where I think the controls are going to be and what they're going to do, and then we'll program it up and we'll try it out and see how it goes. The advantage is with using the Embarcadero is that everything's dead easy to move around and change, so we can pretty much make it up as we go along. So I shall get generating some user interface controls and bring you back when I've done so. Okay, so here we are. I've built that in about an hour, 2 hours. So that's what we've got, and that's what we drew, so not too far away for now. So I am now going to get it so we can load and save our battery action and sequence setups and edit them, and then we will move on to trying to send them to the Arduino. So shall we try that? Shall we see, just check that compiles okay? It should. There we go. And there she is, and all these runs we can edit those. Okay, that's a checkbox. So I shall get on and do some more coding and show you the results. Just a slightly annoying feature of the Embarcadero. We had a hello world button just to demonstrate the interface working, which we've now got rid of because we put the proper controls in place, but the function to process the click of that button doesn't get deleted when the button gets deleted. So you can change things around. You can end up with these orphaned functions in the code, which I'm not doing any harm and not taking up much space, but they're a bit confusing, so we need to manually delete it, and it'll now complain it can't find it, so we delete the function. Okay, here's a clever little feature. This is our up down button for setting our sequence stage, and if we look in the events, it's got an associate, and we can associate that with edit sequence stage, if I can find it. So now when we operate the buttons, it automatically puts the result in that edit. The only disadvantage is you can't put buttons where you want. It puts them automatically against the editor, but never mind. Okay, So I have done quite a lot of work on this in the background, because just watching me writing code is not terribly exciting. So I will now give you a quick update on what I've done. So should we run it? So here she is. Right, the first thing you will notice is that these parameters here for the various sequence stages, only the ones that are relevant to that stage are shown. So there are no parameters for monitor, it's just reading what the battery voltage is doing. So, but if I change this stage to constant current charge, we have a charge current, an end voltage, a timeout, and we can use the monitor voltage if we require. We're not concerned at this point at exactly how this works in practice. We're just trying to get this software up and running. So similarly, if we go into discharge, we have an end voltage, a discharge current, and we can again use the monitor voltage. And as we go through the stages, so if we set that stage to that, as we go through the stages, the various parameters appear and disappear. That is because here we can, all these objects on the screen, we can just make them visible or invisible in one line of code, which doesn't affect the way they operate. You just can't see them. So that's one thing. Okay, another thing is entering numbers. Right, so here we have a charge current set to 100 milliamps now. Now this is an editor, a text editor. I can enter any printable character into this, any ASCII character, but of course not only if we have letters in it, it's not a valid number. So what does it do? Now do we just set it to 0? And we also have a minimum and a maximum, in this case charge current, we want to use. So for instance, so what I do is I let you enter whatever text you like into here, but if the value is not valid, the text comes up red. So for instance, if I type a P in, 100p is not a valid current in milliamps, so it enters red. Similarly, if I put 0 milliamps in, that's meaningless. And if I put enough zeros, there we go, you can't charge up more than an amp, it enters red. Okay, there's another feature. Okay, as you probably noticed, the program now has some menus. So the file has a load and a save and an exit menu, and we have an action and a serial menu, which I haven't generated yet because we haven't got that far on with the program. So adding a menu is dead easy. If we look in standard, there is T-main menu, and we just drag one of those, and when we have a T-main menu on the it's added another one. Didn't want to do that. So we double click on the menu we've got, and there we get a little window with our menus on. And if we wanted to add, say, select port, now I need to double click select port, there we go. So we now have a select port menu item, and if we look in the load item in the events, we have a load click, and if I haven't put the edit in yet, But if we double click on the exit, it generates our little function to put it in, and here we have the load click function, which does all the file loading stuff. So menus, very easy. Okay, I showed you the file menu, and also worth looking at the file format and the way I've done that. So if we run the program, we can load test.btr.btr is what I've called the battery set of files, and this is just a load of meaningless stuff that I created to test the editor. Okay, now if we look at that file, which I happen to have here, we'll see that it's a series of 4-letter idents and numbers. All these numbers are 16-bit unsigned numbers. If we need something else, we have to convert somehow. Each of these lines represents a parameter. For instance, CPTY is the battery capacity, which here is 1.234 amps, 1234 milliamps. The most obvious way of saving all these settings would be just to save them as a block of data. However, as the program evolves, the parameters will change, so then the block of data will be not compatible with the way it was on older versions of the program, which leads to all sorts of problems, believe me. So this way we have the advantage. When we load a battery, the first thing it does is create the battery with all default values. So if the file is from an old version of the program which doesn't have the latest parameters in that have been added recently, say, it doesn't matter, the default values are still there. Similarly, if we try and load a file that has parameters in it that the current software doesn't recognize anymore, for instance, we just decided they weren't required, then it just ignores them. So it's infinitely extensible, as it were. It also has some keywords which tell it, well, the where to put the data. For instance, we have a number of tasks, and each task has a number of sequences. So here you have, it says we're looking at task 0, and this is the parameter. There's only one in task 0, and here sequence 0, and these are all the parameters for sequence 0, and then sequence 1, these are all the parameters for sequence 1, etc. And there are 10 sequences, I believe. Sequence 8, sequence 9, and then we move on to task 2, sequence 0. Okay, so I hope that gives you a little flavour of Embarcadero C Builder and some of its features. It's also allowed us to generate our editor and get it to a state where it's usable. All it lacks now really is the serial connection to the Arduino, which is what we'll get onto next time. So now I think I'm going to leave it there. If you like the channel, please subscribe, thumbs up maybe, comment if you've got something to say. So for now, it's goodbye from Triplicate, home of interesting electronics. Goodbye.